Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So some of the masail related to the month of Ramadan, especially the nights of Qadr, and the entire month, is Salatul Layl. Salatul Layl, the tahajjud. وَمِنَ اللَّيْلِ فَتَهَجَّدْ بِهِ نَافِلَةً لَكَ عَسَىٰ أَن يَبْعَثَكَ رَبُّكَ مَقَامًا مَحْمُودًا. Salatul Layl has 8 rak'ah. 8 rak'ah plus al-shaf' and al-watr. But Salatul Layl is a reference to the first 8 rak'ah, which is done 2 rak'ah plus 2 plus 2 plus 2, just like the morning prayers. Every nafilah, every single nafilah we do has only 2 rak'ah, not 3, not 4. Every nafilah, it has to be done with 2 rak'ah only. The only nafilah which is done with 1 rak'ah is Salatul Watr. Watr. So Salatul Layl has 8 rak'ah plus shaf', which is 2 rak'ah, that makes 10, and a plus watr, which is 1 rak'ah, and that's altogether makes 11. And the best time for it is after midnight. But if you, let's say if you want to sleep, you're going to go to work tomorrow, you have obligations, you can't stay until midnight, then you can pray it before midnight. Before midnight, you can pray it at 10 p.m., 11 p.m., 9 p.m., 8 p.m., after Salatul Isha, if you cannot stay awake until midnight. But the prime time of it is the last hour, last sa'a or hour before Fajr. That is the prime time of Salatul Layl. And Salatul Layl, after Suratul Hamd, Fatihatul Kitab, every rak'ah, we have to recite Fatihatul Kitab, whether this prayers is mandatory, wajib, like the daily prayers, or nawafil, mustahab, recommended. It has to begin, no prayers, la salata, there is no prayers without Fatihatul Kitab. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. But then after that, you can choose any verse to recite. You can also hold the Quran if you want to read, because this is the best thing. The best act is to recite Quran during Salatul Layl. So if you are not familiar, if you are not memorizing, you can hold the Quran in your hand, in the right hand, in the left hand, it doesn't matter, and you can read from the book. And if you don't have time, you can skip the surah. You just read Fatihatul Kitab. It's not wajib, mandatory in the nawafil to recite the surah, but it is mandatory to recite the hamd, Fatihatul Kitab. So you can skip the surah, and you can only do al-hamd, Fatihatul Kitab, and then you go to ruku'. You can do it in Salatul Layl. So once you finish the 8 rak'ah, and sometimes people are too tired, they cannot do the 8 rak'ah, no problem. You can do shaf' and watr, the 3 rak'ahs. Shaf', which has 2 rak'ah, and watr, which has 1 rak'ah. So when you arrive into shaf', in the first rak'ah, after Fatihatul Kitab, recite Qul A'udhu bi Rabbil Nas. In the second rak'ah, after Fatihatul Kitab, recite Qul A'udhu bi Rabbil Falaq. And then after the second, you don't have to do qunut. It doesn't have. Salatul Shaf' does not have qunut, because the qunut of Salatul Shaf' is linked to the qunut of Salatul Watr, because you are doing what? So you don't do qunut in Salatul Shaf', no qunut, just 2 rak'ah. And then you stand for the last rak'ah, which is Salatul Watr. وَالشَّفْعِ وَالْوَتْرِ وَالْفَجْرِ وَلَيَالٍ عَشْرٍ وَالشَّفْعِ وَالْوَتْرِ. These are 2 important rak'ah, 2 important prayers. 3 rak'ah, 2 important prayers. So in Salatul Shaf', in Salatul Watr, when you recite Suratul Hamd once, After that, it's recommended that you recite Surah Qul Huwallahu Ahad, the Tawheed 3 times. 3 times. So 1 time Fatihatul Kitab, 3 times Qul Huwallahu Ahad, then 1 time Qul A'udhu bi Rabbil Falaq, and 1 time Qul A'udhu bi Rabbil Nas. And then you raise your hand. You raise your hand for the dua. There are many duas you can say. Many duas. You can be formal, you can be informal. So in the qunut, it's good to recite Dua al-Faraj. Dua al-Faraj is the following dua. La ilaha illallah al-Halim al-Kareem. La ilaha illallah al-Ali al-Azim. Subhanallahi Rabbi as-samawati as-sab' wa Rabbi al-aradin as-sab' wa ma fihinna wa ma baynahunna wa Rabbi al-Arsh al-Azim. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. This is called Dua al-Faraj. Why Dua al-Faraj? Because the deceased is about to die, a person is about to die, and he's struggling with death, struggling 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, some people a week. Then it is recommended that someone sits next to his head or her head and recites this dua, Dua al-Faraj, the dua that I just recited. And then after that, 7 times you say, هَذَا مَقَامُ الْعَائِذِ بِكَ مِنَ النَّارِ. Oh Allah, this station, this standing now, my standing is the standing of someone who is seeking refuge in you from hellfire. هَذَا مَقَامُ الْعَائِذِ بِكَ مِنَ النَّارِ. And then after that you pray for 40 people, minimum 40. You may increase the number to 50, to 60, to 70, to 80, but minimum 40. Pray for them. Beginning with your parents, grandparents, maternal, paternal grandparents, uncles, aunts, siblings. Begin with your family member. First, al-aqrabuna awla bil ma'ruf. Begin with your family member. Who is the closest one to you? My mother is the closest one to me. I begin with my mother and my father, and then, my wife and my children and my cousins and my aunts and uncles. Some of them are deceased, some of them are still living. You can do both. And then your friends, many friends ask you, they say, نلتمسكم الدعاء. So remember them, remember your friends. It could be 70 people, it could be sometimes it reaches 100, sometimes more than 100, whatever you can afford. But don't do less than 40. And then you can count with the tasbih, or with your fingers you can count. Either way. And then when you are done praying for others, what do you pray for them? Allahumma khfir li fulan. Oh Allah, forgive my father, my mother. Oh Allah, prolong the life of my father, my mother, my son, my husband, my wife. Or Allah, enrich. If someone is struggling with his livelihood, you pray for their sustenance, for their rizq. If someone has health issue, you pray for the recovery. If someone has a problem, in his marriage, you pray for them. So whatever they ask you to pray for. And then after that, you pray for yourself. And if you still have time, then you do 70 times Astaghfirullah Rabbi wa atubu ilayh. Astaghfirullah Rabbi wa atubu ilayh. And if you are still alive, standing on your feet, you may do 300 times Ilahi al-afu, al-afu. Pardon me, pardon me, pardon me. 300 times. 3 tasbihs. 3 cycles of tasbihs. Now some people cannot stand, it's too long. You may sit. You may sit. All the nawafil, you are allowed to do them while you are sitting. Just like nafilatul isha, when we do nafilatul isha and we are sitting. So all the nawafil, including salatul layl, the tahajjud, if you cannot stand, it's better to stand. But if you can't stand, then you may do them sitting, inshallah. Inshallah, you remember us in your dua. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Either way. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على أنبياء الله جميعا وعلى سيدهم وخاتمهم حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، سيما سيدنا وإمامنا وقائدنا وملاذنا الإمام الحجة بن الحسن المهدي المنتظر، عجل الله تعالى فرجه وسهل مخرجه وجعلنا من أنصاره وأعوانه. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. من عمل صالحا من ذكر أو أنثى وهو مؤمن فلنحيينه حياة طيبة ولنجزينهم أجرهم بأحسن ما كانوا يعملون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. March 8th, what day is March 8th? Who knows? Sisters, it's International Women's Day or Women's Day. The United Nations recognized the year 1974 as the Women's Year, International Women's Year. And then they designated March 8th every year on March 8th as the International Women's Day. And of course, they emphasize and remind us about gender equality, about we have to stand, we have to protect women, stand against abuse and violence, all sorts of violence, be it domestic, be it in the community, against women. Many of them are subjected, unfortunately, to violence and abuse. And also to celebrate the accomplishments of women and girls. We celebrate their achievements, their accomplishment. And since tomorrow or after tomorrow is the 10th of Ramadan, the month of Ramadan also coincides with the martyrdom of Lady Khadija bint Khuwaylid, Khadija al-Kubra alayha salam. I'd like to shed some light on the role of women in our life and everybody's life. And I'd like tonight to thank on your behalf, on behalf of all the mu'mineen, we have to thank our mothers, our wives, our sisters, our daughters, our granddaughters, the females in our community, every female, young or old. We tell them that we respect them, we honor them, we appreciate what they do for us. We appreciate what they do for mankind, and without them, honestly, we cannot survive. Men cannot survive, cannot move forward without women. So tonight, inshallah, when you go home, salute your wife, salute your daughter, your mother, and thank them for what they do. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, "Ma akram an-nisaa illa kareem, wa ma ahanahunna illa la'im." Whoever respects women, he's a generous man, a noble man. Whoever respects women. And whoever insults women is a mean person. He's not honorable. This is the hadith of our noble Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So the Holy Quran respects women. And the Prophet ﷺ respect women, and the family of the Prophet, Ahlul Bayt, the Imams, they also, I'm going to share with you some of their hadith on behalf of the Prophet and his family regarding the standing of women, regarding the status of women, regarding the honor and respect and the sacrifices of women. But also at the same time, we may open a book and we find some hadith that insults women, and I'm going to share with you. I'm going to share with you some hadiths from the Sunni sources and hadiths from the Shia sources. So let's begin with the good news, the hadith from the Ahlul Bayt source, the Imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, who's the leader of Ahlul Bayt, the patriarch of Ahlul Bayt, he says, من أخلاق الأنبياء حب النساء. The manners of the prophets, the messengers of God, the apostles of God, is the love and respect for women. Every prophet of God, every messenger of God loved and respected women. This is their manner. This is part of their akhlaq. And he says, ما أحب من دنياكم إلا النساء والطيب. Prophet Muhammad says two things I love from your dunya. And this is in Kafi, Kitab al-Kafi, the Shaykh al-Kulayni. He says, I love two things out of this dunya. One, women, and one, fragrance, طيب. In another hadith, he added one more thing, and he says, what else? Salatul Layl, Salatul Layl. I love these three things from this dunya. And he also says, ما زال جبرائيل يوصيني بالمرأة حتى ظننت أنه لا ينبغي طلاقها. Every time Jibreel comes down, he reminds me of respecting women, reminds me of their rights, reminds me that they should not be abused, till I thought that it's haram, it's haram, illegal, forbidden for a man to divorce his wife. Because Jibreel kept reminding me about their rights. And also he says, Al-Imam al-Sadiq says, عن رسول الله, اتقوا الله في الضعيفين. O men, reverence God and fear God when it comes to the right of the two oppressed. Who are the two oppressed? One, al-Nisa, and the second, al-Yatim. Those two are oppressed. Why they are oppressed? Why Imam al-Sadiq says women are oppressed at that time, and maybe now too, even now. Many Muslim and non-Muslim societies, women are being marginalized, neglected, treated as second-class, third-class citizens. Why they are oppressed? Because the patriarch society, when men dominate society, they don't leave space for women. And this is something ancient. And I'm going to tell you how philosophers, great philosophers, ancient philosophers, Greek philosophers, what they said about women. You will be amazed. And some of the Muslim and non-Muslim philosophers, Muslim philosophers and Western philosophers, they adopted the Greek version. The Greek, they looked with inferiority at women. They looked at women as being an object either of sex or reproduction. Let me share with you what some of the Greek philosophers, we have three important Greek philosophers, you know them, you studied that in high school. It begins with Socrates, followed by Plato, followed by Aristotle. The way they spoke about women is horrible. You can't believe it. You can't believe it. Let me tell you what Socrates says about women. He says, he was asked, which type of beasts or cats, which type of cats, wild cats, is the most dangerous, is the most harmful and dangerous? What did he answer? He said, women. Women are the most dangerous. Check his work. He has books you can read. He says women are the most wild and most dangerous cats. And then his student after him, his student, Plato, when he was asked about women, and by the way, they say Plato, he always advocated gender equality. He said women have to be equal with men. But yet, again, when it comes to the nature of women, Plato says she is qasir, she's minor. Have you seen when we say this person is underage, minor, incapable? This is what he says. And he says she should not receive inheritance. If her father dies, if her mother dies, okay, if her husband dies, she should not receive inheritance. Unfortunately, some societies, Arab and non-Arab societies, are following Plato in this. When the father dies, the daughters are deprived from inheritance. A brother takes the inheritance for himself. He's following what Plato said 2,500 years ago. And then you come to Aristotle. Aristotle said women, God created, he did not believe in God, of course. He said women were created only for one thing. What is it? Reproduction, just to make babies, that's it. She's a machine. She's a machine just to deliver babies, that's it. She cannot have any political position, any political right, not even any social role. She cannot have any social role. Unfortunately, these ideas, these unjust ideas, inferior, degrading, demeaning, derogatory names, was transferred to some Western philosophers in Europe and Muslim philosophers. Some of the Muslim philosophers who were deeply impacted by the Greek and ancient philosophers was Hussein ibn Abdullah ibn Sina. The Persians call him Bu Ali Sina. In America and the West, they call him Avicenna. Avicenna was the greatest Muslim philosopher. He died almost 1,020 years ago. And he is buried in Hamadan, a city in Iran. He was born in Uzbekistan, in Bukhara, Uzbekistan. And he lived in many countries. And he wrote many books. One of his books, famous books, is Ash-Shifa, the healing. In this book, this is what he says about women. And he took most of his principles and ideas and opinions from the Greek philosophers. This is what he says about women. He says, talaq, divorce, should not be given to women. It's only in the hand of men. Never ever give the right of divorce to your wife. Never ever. Why? Because she is wahiyatul aql. Her aql is weak, Her aql is weak. However, مبادرة إلى طاعة الهوى والغضب. مبادرة, she rushes and hastens to follow her desire and her anger. Her desire and her anger. So this is how he describes her. Another philosopher, Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, by the way, Ibn Sina, the Sunnis, they say he was a Sunni. The Shias say he was a Shi'i. But he was neither Sunni nor Shi'i. He was Ismaili. He was Ismaili. Ibn Sina was Ismaili. After him, 950 years ago, Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, who was a Sunni, who was born in Khurasan, in Tus, and he's buried also in Khurasan and Tus, is one of the greatest Sufis and Muslim philosophers. From Khurasan, he went to Gorgan, to Nayshabur, he came to Baghdad, he came to Damascus, he came to Alexandria in Egypt, in Cairo, in many cities. He lived, but then he went back and he died in Tus. He's buried there. Abu Hamid al-Ghazali has a very important book. This book is the huge reference for Muslims, for Sufis, for Sunnis, for even Shias. His book is called Ihya'u Ulum ad-Din. 4 volumes, I have it at home. Ihya'u Ulum ad-Din. It's a beautiful book. Book of Akhlaq. He himself says, that women, kaydahunna azim. Kayd means a plotting, conspiracy. In conspiracy, they are number 1. Do you agree, women? Do you agree? Huh? In conspiracy, are you number 1? Inna kaydahunna azim. This is number 1. Number 2, he says, وَشَرُّهُنَّ فَاشٍ. And their evil is rampant. The evil took over everything. The evil of women. وَالْغَالِبُ عَلَيْهِنْ. Most of the time, what overcomes them, سُوءُ الْخُلُقِ. They have bad akhlaq. Can you imagine? Sorry, women, really sorry. I'm just quoting what he's saying. I don't believe in what he says. Because when I see my mother, when I see my wife, when I see my daughter, my sisters, they have good akhlaq. When I see women in my community, I am proud of so many of them. So I disagree with him. I don't know what happens to those men. They had a fight with the wife and then he comes and writes a book. Maybe. And then warakakatul aql, also they are dominated by the weakness of their reason and their aql. Not only Muslim philosophers, Westerners in France. France is considered the cradle of democracy. France is considered the cradle of Western democracy. And Germany also, and England also. Let me share with you a couple of quotations from Western philosophers. One of them is Friedrich Nietzsche. He died about 125 years ago. He died year 1900. This is a great German philosopher. When he comes to women, he says women are not fit for a friendship. You cannot trust them. You cannot have women as your friends. This is what he says. And then why they are not reliable or untrustworthy? Because he says inside them there is a hidden rebellious devil inside them. And he says if women, they hate someone, if they hate someone, they become blind in their hate, not logical. The hate becomes very blind when they hate someone. They hate out of blindness, Another German philosopher, Arthur Schopenhauer, he says, women cannot rule. They have also to always to follow. They have to follow men. They cannot rule themselves. Exactly, the Chancellor of Germany was women and many leaders. But this is their philosopher, who died 1860. So this is what some philosophers think about women. But what is more amazing, my friends, is what you find in Sahih al-Imam al-Bukhari, Sahih Imam Muslim, Musnad al-Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. If I tell you what you find, you're going to be shocked. Let me share with you. And I have these books at home and I read the hadith firsthand from the book, not a quotation. The hadith is found. I wish I can bring these books with me. I cannot transport these books every night. I have them in my library. So what does Imam Muslim and Imam Bukhari and Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal say? They attribute some hadith to the Prophet, but we believe these hadiths are false. It's impossible for a man like Muhammadun al-Moustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to speak and to say these hadiths. One hadith, it says, Uritun nar. The hadith is found in Bukhari, in Muslim, in Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Ibn Majah. The Prophet is telling his companions that I was able to see the hellfire. Uritun nara فَأَكْثَرُ أَهْلِهَا النِّسَاء. Most people in the hellfire are women. No comment. I'm telling you to show you the contrast. No, I'm telling you, if you wait, to show you what Imam al-Sadiq says. What Imam al-Sadiq, in contrast, what Imam al-Sadiq, these are the views of Sunni scholars and Shia scholars. So this is what Sunni scholars say. They ascribe to the Prophet. What Imam al-Sadiq says is exactly the opposite. Someone comes to Imam al-Sadiq, his name is, and this is in Kitab La Yahdiruhu al-Faqih, one of the 4 books, one of the 4 sources of hadith in the Shia tradition is the book of Man La Yahdiruhu al-Faqih للشيخ الصدوق. Someone comes to Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam and he says to him, Ya ibn Rasulullah, شيء يقولها الناس. The public, they say something. They say the majority of the people of fire are women. إن أكثر أهل الناس النساء. What do you think? What is your comment? Listen to the comment of your Imam. The Imam said, how could it be? How could it be? How could it be? It means wrong. This is wrong. Another hadith, Imam al-Sadiq himself, in the same book, من لا يحضره الفقيه, you can check that out, volume 3, page 342. He says, إن أكثر أهل الجنة المستضعفين من النساء. In fact, the vast majority of the people of paradise are women. Why? Because they have been oppressed. المستضعفين من النساء. علم الله تعالى, Allah knows ضعفهن فرحمهن. Allah knows their situation and their suffering. This is why He is bestowing mercy upon them. He's compensating them for their suffering in this life. He's compensating them. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam says, say loud salawat. If you women, if you want me to say hadiths in your favor, say 3 salawats. ذكر رسول الله. This is in the books of Ahlul Bayt, the hadith in the books of Ahlul Bayt. The Prophet was speaking about jihad. ذكر الجهاد فقالت امرأة يا رسول الله فما للنساء من هذا فما للنساء من هذا الشيء. You are speaking about jihad and men going and carrying guns and swords and fighting. What do we get? What credit we get? We are just sitting at home doing nothing. He said no. He said للمرأة ما بين حملها إلى وضعها إلى فطامها من الأجر كالمرابط في سبيل الله. When a mother, the moment she gets pregnant with a baby, until she starts feeding the baby after delivery, إلى وضعها, and until she wean the baby, which is how long after delivery? Sometimes 2 years, sometimes less. This period, which is almost 3 years, the wife, the mother, is considered as a soldier standing in the battlefield, defending Allah and defending the religion and defending Islam. And the Prophet says, if she dies in this process, during this period, she will get فَلَهَا مَنْزِلَةُ الشَّهِيد. She gets the status of martyr, a martyr, shaheed. This is how Ahlul Bayt, the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt respect women. This is how. You can see the contrast now. You can see the contrast. And then, there are plenty of other hadith. Another one. So those, when the Prophet says, إِنَّ الرَّجُلَ إِذَا سَقَى إِمْرَأَتَهُ مِنَ الْمَاءِ أُجْرٍ. When you give a cup of water to your wife, you get points, you get ajr, you get reward. He says, إِنَّ الرَّجُلَ لَيُؤْجَرُ فِي رَفْعِ اللُّقْمَةِ فِي إِلَى فَمِ امْرَأَتِهِ. When you put a bite of food in her mouth, you get, inshallah, tonight at suhoor, you all do this, inshallah, with your wives. So again, let's go back to the Sunni sources. No, just a comment. So they say when the Prophet said the vast majority of women, the vast majority of the people of hellfire are women, people asked him, why, Ya Rasulullah? He said, yakfur, they are disbelievers. Qila, Ya Rasulullah, ayakfurna billah? Do they disbelieve in God? He says, no, they don't disbelieve. They believe in God. يكفرن الزوج العشير. They disbelieve in their husbands. Because they disbelieve in their husbands, then وَيَكْفُرْنَ الْإِحْسَانِ. They do not appreciate his kindness, his ihsan. And then he adds, I don't think the Prophet would ever say this sentence, لو أحسنت إلى إحداهن الدهر ثم رأت منك شيئا قالت ما رأيت منك خيرا. If you serve your wife the entire time, 30 years, 50 years, and then after that you do something small to her, bad thing to her, she says there is no goodness in you. Absolutely no goodness in you. Women, do you accept this? Do you do this to your husbands? No, really, do you do this to your husbands? I don't think they do. This is why these types of hadith contradicts reason, aql, and contradicts the book of God, and contradicts the hadith of the Prophet and the hadith of our Imam. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Tomorrow is the eve of the martyrdom and the departure of Lady Khadija alayhi salam. Let me share one hadith. Khadija was a great, very great lady. Because number one, she was the most beautiful woman in Mecca. Number two, she was the richest. She was a multimillionaire. Usually millionaires, multimillionaires, not many of them, not all of them, some of them, they get arrogant. Arrogance comes with wealth and money. And this is not me. This is a theory found in this book. Where is this theory in this book? Who knows the theory? That with money comes arrogance. أحسنت. إن الإنسان ليطغى أن رآه استغنى. Once he becomes rich and self-sufficient and he has all the resources, he's dominating the society, he's influential, he's powerful, he becomes what? Rebellious against God. He starts defying God, defiant and arrogant. This is a theory in the Quran. Of course, there are exceptions. There are some people who their hearts is filled with faith, so money does not change them. Money does not allow them to be arrogant because they are connected to God. Many of them. One of them was Khadija alayhi salam. She gave all her money. It's not easy for a wife to give her money to her husband. I know many wives, they help their husbands out, with the expenses. Nowadays, in this country, both have to work. A husband and the wife, both have to work. Sometimes the husband sacrifices all his money. Sometimes the wife works. The husband cannot find a job. So she puts her money at his disposal. There are some people like that, definitely. And this is how it should be. This is how it should be. They have to share the burden of life. They have to share the burden of the expenses of this life. They have to share it. Marriage is about partnership. Partnership in everything. In your money, in your aspirations, in your thoughts, in your journey in this life, and everything you have. A husband has to stand with his wife at the time of her grief, her sadness, her depression, her anxiety. The wife has to stand with her husband at the time of his, uncertainty and weakness. هُنَّ لِبَاسٌ لَكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ لِبَاسٌ لَهُنَّ. Women are your protection, O men, and O men, you are the protection for women. So Khadija came day one when she married the Prophet, when she found him to be the most honest person in Mecca. Many people in Mecca, they came asking for her hand. But you know why they asked for her hand? Because of her money. And she's not stupid, she's intelligent. She knew that they are not interested in her. They are interested in her money. And you have to be smart too, you as a female. If you have money, if you have a home, if you have a land, if you have a future, when someone comes and asks your hand, you have to ask him this question. Why you are asking my hand? Why? Are you interested in the green card? Are you interested in citizenship? Are you interested in my money? Is it because my father is rich and you know he's going to die and then I'm going to inherit this money, and this money is going to come to you. Ask these questions. Ask. You have to ask. You have to ask. Marry someone who's interested in not in your money, not in your land, not in what you have, in your character. Our assets are our character. Money comes and goes. But the character, the akhlaq. Marry someone who has akhlaq. When you marry someone, as Imam Hussein said, a man comes to him and he says, I have one daughter, only one daughter, and I love her so much, and I'm worried about her future. I'm worried. So who should I give her in marriage? Who? Man uzawwijuha? Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam answered in one sentence. Fathers who have daughters, listen to this, please. Don't look at your phones. Listen to this. Listen to this. Imam Hussein says, زوجها ممن يتقي الله تعالى. Give her in marriage to someone who reverence God, who fears God and reverence God. فَإِنْ أَحَبَّهَا, if there is love between them, there is love, أَكْرَمَهَا, he will always honor her. He would never abuse her. He would never ever abuse her. He would always honor her and respect her and cherishes her. وَإِنْ لَمْ يُحِبْهَا, if there is no love between them, sometimes there is no love. No love. He would not abuse her. He would not abuse her. Maybe he doesn't love her, but he would never abuse her. This is someone who reverences God and sees God above him all the time. This is my advice. Because I see many cases of divorce. Many, many cases of divorce in the Muslim community. Because before marriage, they don't do their homework. They don't do enough homework. They don't investigate. They fall in love, and especially young ones, when they go through the state of romance and love, they fall in love, they do not think about the consequences. And love creates blindness. When you love someone, you become blind. You don't see the bad side of him or her. All what you see is a beauty because you are in love. But once the marriage is done, they come back from honeymoon. From day one, you see problems. The other day, someone came here and he said to me, I was in love with someone and I left her. But I am depressed and sad. I said, why did you leave her then? He said, because I knew this person, I could not trust her. The day we get married and she gets pregnant, she's going to dump me and leave me and take the child and go away. And this is the reality, my friends. This is the reality. So be careful. Take your time. Don't rush into marriage. Don't rush your daughter. Don't rush your son into marriage. Be careful. Take your time to investigate about that person, about that female, about that male. Take your time. Khadija came and she said, Ya Rasulullah, me and my wealth at your disposal. Dar khidmat shuma, at your disposal. Nobody does this. Nobody. And the reason Islam was advanced in Mecca and Medina was the money of Khadija alayhi salam and the protection, the emotional protection of Khadija. This is why many years after her death, the Prophet kept remembering her. He would say, Khadija, وَمَنْ مِثْلُ Khadija? Who can be like Khadija? Aisha was there. Aisha says, I'm jealous. I can't stand the Prophet mentioning another wife. So she came to him, and this is not a secret, my friends. What I tell you, I bring the evidence from Sunni references. Sunni references. Every hadith I say, it has roots in the Sunni references. So the Prophet said to her, she said to the Prophet, but I am here, I am younger, I am more beautiful than Khadija. Of course, Aisha did not even see Khadija. Khadija died before the Prophet came to Mecca. The Prophet lived with her to Medina. The Prophet lived with her in Mecca for 25 years. لَقَدْ أَبْدَلَكَ اللَّهُ بِخَيْرٍ مِّنْهَا. God has substituted you with a better wife. He says, no, God did not substitute me with a better wife. No. If you want me to be honest, you are not a better wife. And then he said, Listen to the 4 things the Prophet said about Khadija. He said, آمنت بي حين كفر بي الناس. This hadith is in the book of Musnad Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. The Prophet said, Khadija was the first one to believe in me, to believe in my prophethood when all people rejected me. All people. For 3 years, the only Muslims on earth in Mecca were 3 individuals. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib, and Lady Khadija bint Khuwaylid. For 3 years. His own family, they rejected him. The family of the Prophet, his uncles, they didn't believe in him. So, آمنت بي حين كفر بي الناس وصدقتني. She accepted what I said. She did not belie me. صدقتني. She endorsed everything I said. Whereas حين كذبني الناس, most people, they belittled me. They did not believe in me. وواستني بمالها إذ حرمني الناس. She helped me with her wealth when people deprived me from their wealth and their money. Khadija gave me her wealth. And last but not least, ورزقني الله تعالى منها الولد دون غيرها من النساء. Other women, they did not have children. God gave me children from Lady Khadija. Those children were whom? Al-Qasim. This is why the kunya, the nickname of the Prophet, Abu al-Qasim Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And the second one, Al-Tahir. No, Ibrahim is from Maria, the Coptic. Al-Tahir. Al-Qasim, Al-Tahir. And then she had 4 daughters. Some historians believe 2 of those daughters are not her biological daughters. They are her sister. She had a sister by the name of Hala, her sister's daughter, and she adopted them because Hala died before Khadija. So Khadija took them in their custody. And those 2 sisters were Zainab and Ruqayya. Zainab and Ruqayya, they are not the biological daughters of Khadija alayhi salam. But the biological daughter of Khadija are Kulthum and Fatima az-Zahra alayhi salam. Khadija died after the siege, which lasted 3 years. In an area, if you go to Mecca, you will find this area. The area today is a cemetery. The name of the cemetery, when you go to Mecca, search for this cemetery. It's not too far from Masjid al-Haram. The cemetery is Maqbaratul Hujun. This cemetery used to be Shi'bu Abi Talib, the farm or the ranch of Abu Talib. So for 3 years, the Muslims were under siege. No one can get out, no one can get in. No food. No food to eat. They were under siege by Quraysh. As a result of that, as a result of malnutrition, lack of food, 2 defenders of the Prophet died. One of them is Abu Talib alayhi salam, who is today, the 8th of Ramadan, is the anniversary of his martyrdom. And the second one, after a few weeks, only a few weeks after him, the wife of the Prophet, Khadija bint Khuwaylid, after a few days after Abu Talib alayhi salam. Some people say 2 days, which is the 10th of Ramadan. Some people say 3 weeks later. When the Prophet lost those 2 defenders, Allah, in this case, asked him to leave the city of Mecca because he has no more support. No more support. He had 1 man supporting him and 1 woman. Ali ibn Abi Talib was still young. Allah asked the Prophet to move from Mecca to Medina. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات تابع اللهم بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات. Mu'mineen, there are 3 points. Point number 1, don't forget, tonight, in a couple of hours or more, the time is going to change. From 2 a.m., at 2 a.m., the time is going to go back to go forward, 3 a.m. So Salatul Fajr tomorrow, in a few hours from now, is going to be before 6, 5:57. 5:57. And then tomorrow the iftar is going to be 7:07. 7:07. So you have to be more patient, inshallah. Eat well tonight in the suhoor. Eat 2 meals, inshallah. So 7:07. And then the program, we don't have iftar on Sundays, Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays. No physical iftar, but there is a spiritual iftar. So please come here at 8:30. 8:30, drink strong coffee so you don't fall asleep. 8:30, Dua ul-Iftitah begins, and then my speech at 9, inshallah. And I promise you, we go only for 30 or 35 minutes. So by 9:35, you leave, inshallah. Then Thursday, we're going to have Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, we're going to have iftar. This is number 1. Number 2, at 9:15 tonight, we're going to have the youth session, inshallah. Our young generation going to come and participate. They have a session on the dua, on the significance of supplication and dua. So invite your young ones to attend. They begin at 9:15 and they're going to have suhoor, inshallah, here. And the third, I have a request to pray for one of my friends. He's the son of the late Ayatollah al-Uzma Imam Khoi. His son, Hujjatul Islam wal Muslimin Sayyid Abdul Sahib al-Khoi, he had a stroke 2 days ago. He is in a critical condition in the hospital, so please raise your dua. Let's pray for his shifa and recovery, inshallah. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Amman yujibu al-mudtarra idha da'ahu wa yakshifu as-su'. Amman yujibu al-mudtarra idha da'ahu wa yakshifu as-su'. Amman yujibu al-mudtarra idha da'ahu wa yakshifu as-su'. Ya Allah, manna ala mardana bish-shifa'i wal-'afiyah. المريض المنظور ألبسه ثوب الصحة والعافية وعجل في فرج سيدنا ومولانا صاحب العصر والزمان وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات ثواب الفاتحة مع